All right, Definers, welcome back to Sustainability Defined, where Scott and I are here defining sustainability one topic and one bad joke at a time. This is Atypical episode number 2, Scott. So we did an Atypical episode number 1 several months ago. This is our second
That was
one.
on racial justice, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I won't say this one is quite as substantial.
No.
This is a shorty but a goodie, but we're going to be speaking with both incoming and outgoing podcast staff.
Not including my mom this time,
Right.
but still very interesting people.
Adrian is sticking around for the long haul, and that's why we love her so much. So first we'll be speaking with Amelia Kovacs, who is the podcast's new researcher. We're so excited to welcome her to the team.
Mm-hmm.
We'll also be speaking with Matt Arends, who has been helping us out on social, on our website, taking our online presence to the next level, who has a phenomenal new opportunity in Minnesota with a farm he started. We're super excited to learn more about that.
Right. What's cool about Matt and Amelia, Jay, is that they have their own sustainability stuff, that they're doing that is very interesting, that I think the listeners will enjoy hearing about beyond what they've done for the podcast.
Totally. Very complimentary, too. I think they're really in some sweet spots in their careers. So quick context here, Definers. We're taking a little bit of a breather this episode, on top of just, I think, work craziness for both you and me, Scott.
And probably many Definers out there, I think,
Right. I am actually going to be slipping over to Northern California with Anna. Coming up, we're going to be hiking Half Dome. Definers wish us luck, and then having some fun in San Francisco afterwards. So I'll be on the move, and Scott, tell us what you're up to.
Well, first of all, congrats on getting a permit for Half Dome, Jay. That's a big deal.
Thank you. No small feat.
Any advice for listeners who want to get a Half Dome permit?
Yes, actually, find a group of 6 others and all go in at the same time requesting 6 tickets. That's exactly what we did. And only one of us got the 6 tickets, so it worked. But that's the maximum you can request, so it's all about strategy.
Okay, cool. And why I'm taking a break, in part, is because next week I'm going to be at the Waste Expo in Las Vegas, an actual in-person conference work trip. So I'm excited about that.
Right, we're back.
We're back, baby. I'm excited to meet with others in the industry, and I'm speaking there. And then my girlfriend, Shannon, who you've heard on the podcast, she is meeting me out there. We're going to do a couple days in Vegas. We're going to go to Zion National Park. So Jay, you and I are spending some time in the parks over July 4th.
Scott, what's the casino game of choice going to be?
Probably blackjack, but I'm definitely one who we're setting okay, this is what we're comfortable losing. And that's it.
That's wise. Very wise.
I don't know what your strategy is. Yeah.
Nice.
So, okay. And one thing I know, Jay, we wanted to mention to everybody is that we'll likely have to take breathers in the future. And we would love to fill these sort of atypical episodes, at least in part, with stories from you all, the listeners, the Definers. So if you could please reach out to us, tell us your story, tell us what you heard in an episode that really resonated with you. Tell us you heard something and it led you to take some action, or tell your friends and family about something, maybe even a whole career change. We want to hear it. We want to tell that story to everyone else in our community. So email us, hosts, HOSTS, @sustainabilitydefined.com. We want to hear from you. We want to feature you in future episodes.
Wonderful.
And Jay, I think we still want to fit in here reading a review, because that is also very important. And to be honest, Jay, we didn't get one this past month. If someone would have just done it this past month, we would have read it. That would have been the only one. So,
right. And if you rolled the dice correctly, rolling with this Vegas theme, you could have had the chance to share that story on the air with us. So the opportunity's open in the future. So folks, take that up.
But Jay, we went into the archives of the reviews. We found one that we liked, and I'm going to read it to you now. It's from Bry-Quinn from November 2019. It says, very educational. I have had this podcast added into my library for quite some time. Honestly, I've just been ignoring it. Recently, I ran out of other things to watch, LOL. The podcast is wonderful, all caps, and it's a shame I haven't been listening. I'm now catching up on all of the old episodes. I'm already very interested in sustainability. However, your podcast focuses on various topics I usually do not look into/focus on. I really enjoy broadening my scope through your podcast without feeling like I'm listening to a lecture. Keep up the podcast. 2 exclamation points.
2 exclamation points.
Bry-Quinn.
And I love this 2019 vintage, Scott. This was a wonderful year. I think it aged beautifully.
Mm-hmm. So much hope pre-pandemic.
All right, so with that, definers, let's head on over and chat with our esteemed guests this episode, Amelia Kovacs and Matt Arends.
Amelia Kovacs, thanks for joining the Sustainability Defined podcast. We're excited to have you on the team, and we're excited to share more of your background with the definers today. So thanks for making time.
Well, thank you so much. Being a listener myself, this is kind of cool now being on the other side of it. So I just really appreciate you, Scott. Thanks so much.
Of course. So you're calling in from Colorado, and I know you're not just the lead researcher for Sustainability Defined. You have an internship. Do you want to tell the definers about that real quick?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm working at Walking Mountain Science Center, and it's just a nonprofit near Vail, Colorado. And so I've just been leading some zero waste events, working with their waste diversion, as well as creating different like waste access GIS projects. So it's been a really fun time, and exploring the mountains is, it's not a bad job.
Is there skiing? Like, 'cause it's summer. No.
Okay, I got here at the beginning of May, and there was still snow, which is news to me. But
Wow.
I didn't get to go skiing, sadly. But who knows? Maybe there'll be a random snowstorm, and I could go skiing.
There you go.
Lots of hiking.
Okay, that's good. So you mentioned being a listener yourself. How did you find the podcast?
Yeah, so about a year ago, COVID really exposed how much I really missed being around people, because I graduated last year. So I really missed being around people that had these new ideas. And so I was just in the search for all the content I could just throw at myself via podcast, because sometimes, that voice in the back of your head gets kind of annoying. And you're like, I need some voices, some other voices that are informational and something I can learn from, because what you surround yourself with really allows you to grow and allows you to be the best version of yourself. So, I was originally listening to Armchair Expert, which is just like a casual kind of podcast. And then I got into NPR, and NPR is great as well. There's some really great
Indeed
specialty podcasts there. And then I was like, I want something that's more sustainably focused. And I found y'all. And I fell in love with the bad jokes and how you guys outlined topics, and you brought in someone. And yeah, I really fell in love with it. So that's how I found out about it.
Well, thanks for the kind words. I'm glad it showed up on your search. And are there any episodes that particularly resonated with you?
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the recent episodes, episode 59 on eco-anxiety, it was with Dr. Lisa. And I thought that was really insightful, because as someone who majored in conservation biology, this was my life. I know that there are people listening that this is also their job and this is their career, but for me it really was revealing how many other people go through this and that I'm not alone. Also, they also talk about how you can use your anxiety as like a fuel and agency for action. And I thought the steps they provided in saying, hey, this isn't indicative of what's wrong with you, this is indicative of what's wrong with the world, and this is your role within sustainability and how you can change that. So I thought that was really, really nice. I was going on a walk and I was like, this is a good episode. So really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm sure a lot of our listeners have felt those feelings, and kind of like we say in the episode, like almost how can you not if you know about the issue even somewhat. But even just, I didn't know about the term. I'm gonna be honest. Had you heard of eco-anxiety before that episode? Maybe you had.
A little bit. We learned a little bit about it in like my bioethics class, and so having this episode was really like a cherry on top of like, okay, we got this. We're all in this together. So yeah, just a little background of it. But I'm glad that it's becoming more well known, because I think then, if we're able to tackle our anxiety, I think we can make a more sustainable change.
Totally. And talk to us about your journey in sustainability. How did you get interested in it? You've studied it. Are there any lessons learned over your time learning about it, engaging in it, that you want to pass along to the definers? Maybe it's career lessons learned, just interesting tidbits of information.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I guess for a little background about myself, I'm an Arizona native. I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. So firsthand, I really saw, the impacts of air pollution during the summers. The sunsets are incredible, but they're because of the large amounts of air pollution in the city. It also is, a lot of environmental issues are going on there with the drought, a lot.
Is Phoenix like worse than other major cities for air pollution for some reason?
It is pretty bad. We're in the middle of a mountain range, so a lot of it settles.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not worse than like Tokyo, but it's pretty bad. There's just like this big layer of smog that you just see in the city, and you just kind of look at that every day, and you're like, wow, that's there. So I guess that's a little background. I also was originally pre-med in college for 2 years.
And you were just tired of the bad grades. I mean, does anyone get good grades in pre-med?
You know what? Okay, we're going to just stop with that, I guess. No, it was fine. I really liked it. I wanted to help people, and I really cared about, I really loved biology, and I was like, cool. And I was really into it, but when I thought about my next steps after college and the applications of what I learned, I wasn't as excited about that. And I think in the back of my head, sustainability was always there, but I don't think, like a lot of people, I didn't really think about myself and what I wanted originally when I got to college. You're just kind of thrown in there and you're like, this is what I'm going to do. I guess I'll do pre-med. I'm going to be a doctor. Cool. Mom and dad will be proud of me. But I wasn't really truly passionate about it. So that's
a big step though, to like leave that path that maybe is a bit more well established.
Right.
And
linear.
I'm sure your parents are proud of you, but with the path you have chosen, but it's still, kudos to you for really listening to yourself and
Thank you.
Making it happen. So
thank you. Yeah. From there, I just said yes to a lot of different opportunities. My professor, I took the first conservation-based class I had was actually Dr. Hall, who was on the last episode about sustainable landscaping. And she's an incredible person who just, I would just go into her office and she would just really open my eyes to the sustainability world. So finding a mentor is a big lesson and tip that I took on. And just, it's scary. And I guess that's another lesson I learned is being comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like that is the only way you'll grow. Of course, take that with a grain of salt. But I really had to put myself in these uncomfortable situations in order to grow, in order to make these new connections and saying yes to different things that I actually thought would apply to my, little 5-year plan or whatever.
Yeah, I feel like that point about being comfortable with the uncomfortable is a good one as we're all trying to learn. Like you were trying to learn, getting exposed to new content, and then, you could have probably kept listening to the same old things or things you already knew about, maybe a bit more comfortable, but you wanted to dive deeper on sustainability and you found us, and now look at where this has led you. So I feel like that's an important lesson for trying to learn more in your academic life, but even in relationships and friendships and right? So okay, so that's a good one. So what are you most excited about doing in your new role with the podcast?
Yeah, of course, the bad jokes. I have to always bring those to attention. Continuing to make topics more accessible. Like y'all are doing a really great job about, there aren't a lot of super intense lingo that you guys are bringing. It's just like, this is sustainable landscaping. This is what landscaping was. This is what it could be. And I think just also bringing in an expert, it's really, really insightful. And I love the way that y'all have laid that out. And I'd love to continue to do that with more important topics that listeners can then take away little pillars of action that they can integrate into their own life. So learning from you and Jay, that's also really cool to see behind the scenes how y'all make this work. Listeners, they put in so much work behind the scenes. Like this is a large job. So and they put a lot of passion and effort into it. So that's really nice to see behind the scenes. And I guess also making the social media platforms more interactive potentially would be really interesting. Like right now, y'all have a good amount of followers, which is kind of cool. If you aren't already following the Instagram or LinkedIn, go ahead and find them, Sustainability Defined. You'll see them there. But maybe making some stories interactive with quizzes, maybe even like little tidbits of the future episodes, a little sneak peek action there. So I'm really excited for making that more interactive.
Well, we just love your skills. We love your energy. I think Jay and I are excited to have this additional capacity to try new things. And I think we want to hear from the listeners. I think you do, right, too, Amelia? Of like,
Oh, yeah.
give us your ideas. Like, we have Amelia on staff now to help execute things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That would be great. So if y'all have any just, burning ideas that you think would be great for our social media or even for the podcast, you can go ahead and email at hosts@sustainabilitydefined.com. HOSTS.
Oh, you're even spelling it out like us. Well done.
.com. Hey, I thought it was host at first, so I gotta make sure everyone knows. But yeah, that would be really great. If they're like, if y'all have these really cool ideas of, a quiz about zero waste and what to recycle and what to recycle. I don't know.
Right.
So anything like that, I'd love to hear it.
Awesome. Okay, Amelia, I mean, anything else you want to tell the listeners about you, about sustainability resources you really enjoy? Anything you want to encourage the listeners to do beyond what you just said about following us and giving us their ideas? Anything else?
Absolutely. I mean, I guess I'll just end with this. I'm just proud of y'all, all the listeners, of you and Jay. If you're listening to this, you're probably working in the environmental field or at least interested in creating action within the field. And that takes a lot of work. And of course, like we had talked about previously, there's a lot of anxiety tied to that, just with it being our life. So, don't give up. Always strive to find an uncomfortable situation to grow in, or at work, if you notice something isn't right. Sustainability wise, if you could speak up, if you feel comfortable, do it. I'm just really proud of everyone for being a part of this large definers community as well as the environmental community. So keep it up, everyone.
Oh, I feel like we need you as I need you on demand for motivation. I'm ready to go.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Amelia. We're excited to have you on the team. Thanks for introducing yourself to the definers, and I'm excited. Let's get to work.
Yeah. Thanks, Scott. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, definers, we are now joined by Matt Arends for a bittersweet piece of conversation here as we move through this atypical episode. So, Matt, first off, if you wouldn't mind, introduce yourself to the definers out there and maybe just describe a little bit about how you came across the podcast in the first place.
Yeah, so I'm Matt. I currently live in Minnesota. I am starting a small market garden farm. It's crazy to think that it's almost been 3 years since I connected with you and Scott.
Yeah.
I was in Kenya actually waiting at a research conservancy, waiting for a work permit to go to Tanzania to work with the International Rescue Committee. And this was August of 2018. And I kind of 6 months prior, I'd really gotten into sustainability, and I had a lot of downtime at this research conservancy outside of going on safaris and helping PhD researchers. And just came across the podcast, ripped through the first 33 episodes, and on the 33rd, they said, Scott and Jay said they needed help, and I reached out, and it's been now almost 3 years since since I've been helping with social media and kind of helping you guys out. So
yeah, man, and I know the definers out there saw the pivot when you came on. I think our social channels took a step up, the website looked crisper. So, there was so much, Matt, that you've been doing to help take the podcast to the next level. And now, bittersweet, because you're moving on to a fantastic opportunity, which we're going to talk about here for a second. So you mentioned you're starting a smaller market garden style farm. Tell us, how did you get interested in that in the first place?
Yeah, so believe it or not, my background is in international policy. It is not in horticulture or agriculture or anything like that. I've never done large-scale farming. I've had farming that was in my family, but that was more commodity. Both my grandparents farmed. Both my parents grew up on farms in Iowa. But, I mean, I lived in a suburb of Minneapolis. I went to school out east, out at Princeton, and then went and did government consulting and some international development, humanitarian relief stuff. And then I came back to Minnesota in December of 2019, dealing with some chronic pain, and ended up having double hip surgery March of 2020. And with surgery, obviously, I had a lot of downtime.
With a double hip surgery, you don't say.
Yeah, so COVID was unraveling, and I was sitting in bed watching all of this unfold. So, and my mom and I, we didn't know what we were going to do, so we decided she had planted kind of small gardens really after I had left for college, but she had done tomatoes and some cucumbers and peppers and things like that, but her and I ended up doing seedlings for the first time, and this was early spring of 2020. And I just remember coming out and just every day her and I would watch these seedlings for like 2 hours a day. And I just mesmerized by it. And I had kind of gone through this transition period of kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And there was nothing that I guess in a workplace per se that captured my attention than waking up every morning and seeing how much the seedlings grew.
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of like this ownership thing. And so
Sure.
we ended up planting a lot more than we expected that we were going to plant. It was a lot of pots on our porch, and then we built a raised bed, and I grew a ton of kale and beets and radishes, and that was really my first true experience growing my own food. I had lived in large cities, DC, LA, Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, Paris, and I mean, I never had access to like land or even just a spot to be able to do it. I was in apartment buildings. And so kind of over the summer and then, well, early in the summer, obviously with all that time on my hands, I started looking into, well, what value can we actually add to, say, northern vegetable producers, specifically Minnesota, who have a short growing season. So in Minnesota, realistically, most farmers are making the majority of their income from like May until October, which really isn't a lot of time. And so there's been some things like high tunnels, which are unheated greenhouses essentially. But I was really interested, well, how can we provide a low cost greenhouse solution to extend the growing season in Minnesota? And so I got together with a few of my high school buddies that are back in Minnesota, and we came up with these ideas of building these geothermal greenhouses using nothing but air and the ground to heat the greenhouses at night. And so the advantage of that is it's a simple greenhouse that goes up, and the cost of it, depending on the size, the extra cost could be anywhere between $1,500 to $5,000, depending on the size. And we ended up coming up with this idea, and I just put a pitch out on Facebook on one of our community pages for my town, and I had a ton of responses, which was crazy. And then the whole thing was we would put up the greenhouse for free as long as they covered material costs, and we would monitor it. And so we had two people that we ended up building greenhouses for. One of them was a larger structure that was farther south that I'll touch on in a little bit. And then the one in Prior Lake where I live, it was a smaller 12 by 18, so very small, more residential. But that's actually where we're starting the farm. And so this whole partnership came about from just pitching this random idea on Facebook, on a random Facebook community page, to now I'm in partnership with the owner of the land. And we're now building out a full-blown market garden style farm.
Okay, so Matt, you've mentioned these geothermal greenhouses that you started last fall. Just for square one, how does this work? Like, are you digging a hole deep into the ground that's going to, emanate heat up, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it's essentially you're digging a hole down and you're using these perforated drain pipes. So these, what you'd see for tile piping or anything like that. And so you're digging a hole essentially where the greenhouse sits, and you're laying this pipe underneath the ground. And so there's two ways that we did it. We did it 8 feet down, and then we also did it at 4 feet. So we literally dug an 8-foot hole and laid pipe and just ran it back and forth and then ran it back up. And so all it is you're using the ground as your heat source. And so you'll insulate everything that's below the frost line. So in Minnesota, the frost line's 4 feet. But the greenhouse acts as a heat sink. So all we do is we actually just push air. So cold air goes down through the tubes. It heats it and then comes back up. So when it was negative 26 outside, it was 26 degrees in our greenhouse.
Holy cow.
So yeah, that's a 50-degree temperature difference.
That's insane. Yeah, and honestly, I mean, you know, when I think geothermal and maybe other definers too, like you think of like these massive systems that burrow deep into the earth, and like 8 feet's not that far down. I mean, it's like a sizable hole, don't get me wrong, but like,
Right.
you know, not totally outlandish. But anyways, so they're already markedly warmer than the outside air in the wintertime. You know, how are they doing now? I mean, speak to how, you know, have you been able to plant different types of seeds earlier and see those, you know, come to fruition earlier?
Yeah, so we ended up experimenting with peppers. And so we put peppers in there in March 1st, which typically in Minnesota, you're not planting peppers outside until June 1st, May 15th to June 1st. And so we were 2 months ahead of time, and they worked out pretty well. Like I've got multiple peppers that are starting to change colors. So they're a month and a half ahead of all other peppers.
Which I think is fascinating, especially given how short you mentioned the growing season in Minnesota is, right? Like on a percentage change basis, you know, getting ahead of the curve by a month and a half, 2 months is pretty substantial.
Yeah, and that's the big thing, because you can get ahead a month and a half on the front end and then also keep producing about a month and a half on the back end. And so you've just expanded your growing season by 3 months, which is a lot of revenue when you think about it, especially when you're thinking about tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, some of those higher value crops.
We're seeing some awesome fruits, no pun intended, come out of this. But what are some challenges, and then of course maybe additional positives that you've seen over the first few months over and above what you just mentioned?
So the biggest challenge is, I honestly think with the greenhouses, is getting the design right and the insulation. So one of the things that we didn't have enough of was consecutive pipe length. So like if we build another one of these, we'll do it so that it's at least got 100 to 150 feet of consecutive pipe length for more optimal heat transfer.
So you're effectively saying like have just more pipe below ground that's able to heat the air that then comes back up into the ground or into the greenhouse.
And making sure that it is that consecutive, rather, because we built some different manifold styles. And so you had air that only traveled 30 or 40 feet rather than 150 feet. And so that in of itself can actually help heat better. And so that's where we could possibly maintain 45 degrees at night rather than 26 when it's negative 26 outside. So it was those things that we ended up learning. And then kind of the insulation piece, like you do have to use insulation board. And so one of the big things, so any definers out there that are doing sustainability projects, one of the things that I'd love, honestly, is a substitute for like the insulation board, like the 2-inch thick home insulation boards.
Yeah.
Because those are obviously not environmentally friendly. I know hemp is an option, but I think that's the other challenge, is how do you make this also environmentally friendly at all stages, rather than trying to use a bunch of building supplies that eventually will need to get thrown out and stuff like that.
Well, definers, if you've got any ideas, send them to us at hosts, HOSTS, at sustainabilitydefined.com. We'll get those to Matt, and I think that's an awesome opportunity to just kind of outsource this question. But yeah, so Matt, talk about just the market you're seeing as far as folks that are interested in your produce, because I think you said that your farm is located substantially closer to the city of Minneapolis than most other farms in the area. Is that right?
Yeah, so I mean, you would kind of classify us as an urban farm. So by the time we've got full production, we'll probably have about 2 acres worth. And it's high intense, high turnover. Like we're constantly starting, constantly seeding, constantly transplanting, using organic compost, using cow manure, like organic cow manure, to constantly feed the soil. And so this type of farming, it allows us to grow a lot of food on a very small plot of land. So we're located in Prior Lake, Minnesota. It's about 30 minutes outside of Minneapolis. But the actual suburbs themselves, I mean, they absolutely love this. I haven't even needed to promote it on Facebook pages. It's all just been word of mouth referrals so far.
Amazing.
And the statement that I always get is, oh my gosh, these radishes bring me back to when I used to live on the farm and they were just so good.
Oh, the ultimate compliment. That's cool.
Or the kale is just the best kale I've had. Like the grocery store kale doesn't even compare. And so what's unique about our location is we can actually bring people to the farm to have the experience and to show them how we're growing things. And then for them to actually taste produce that has this noticeably different taste profile has just been something that people have loved. And they keep coming back. Like, we've got repeat customers every week. I've noticed here in Minnesota, people don't like kale as much as they did out west and out east. Well, I grew a ton of kale, so I'm sitting on a lot of kale. But people love radishes. They absolutely love radishes here. So I don't know why that is. It might be because of the Midwest farms, but radishes have been going like crazy. It's funny to me. So
amazing. Well, what a cool like additional positive as we're thinking about this, right? Just almost just like tapping into this completely open demand source, right, from folks living around your area that are just craving this stuff. That's so cool. And I realize, Matt, what's the name of your farm so that all these definers can look it up and follow it?
Yeah, so it's called Wild Roots Acres. The website is coming, but the social media is Wild Roots Acres _MN. And so we're posting some stuff about the farm, but it'll be more educational content as well, kind of focused around pollinators, focused around ecosystems, farming practices, sustainable food systems. How do we create sustainable food systems, especially local food systems? Because COVID highlighted that as a big problem. And so it's going to be some about our farm, but it's also going to be larger, more regional, global type topics, because local food is, I think, one of the most important things from both an ecosystem perspective and public health perspective. So a lot more to be shared on that page.
Fantastic. And this might lead into our last question here, but tell us just about your ultimate goal for the farm. Where do you see it going?
So we're in a location where we have access to a lot of customers within 5 miles. And so what I want to be able to use the farm for is, one, obviously producing local food, two, educational programs, whether that's educational programs with school, Chamber of Commerce in our area, other individuals who want to learn more about food through nutrition coaching, things like that, to get that actual experience. And then the last piece is actually using it as a distribution hub for other farms that are farther away.
That is so awesome, Matt. I think everything from where you started this to the ingenious use of geothermal to keep this greenhouse insanely warmer than your frigid Minnesota winters, all the way to what you hope this farm can do, almost serving as a platform of sorts to help share and promote business models like this while serving these real needs. So I think that is just so awesome, Matt. And as we wrap this up, want to make sure that we just send you the most amount of thanks over the years you've been helping us with the podcast and truly taking us to the next level. We are sad to see you go, but we can't help but be excited for you when you hear about all the amazing things we're doing. So we look forward to checking back in with you in the future, getting you back on, giving definers an update on how things are going at Wild Roots Farm, and just spreading this message as far as we can. So Matt, thanks again for everything you've done. Best of luck with Wild Roots Farm in the future, and we are pumped to stay in contact.
I appreciate it. It's been an awesome ride, and I'm going to miss talking to you guys every week.
All right, I hope, definers, you enjoyed our talks with Amelia and Matt. I think that about does it. You all stay sustainable out there. I'm Scott Breen.
And I'm Jay Siegel. We will see you next time.